Today we're going to make this drawing of an ocean liner being tied up at the docks. I think you'll find it a rather easy and interesting picture to make. So let's get started. One of the first lines you might put in would be the water line of the ship. Now notice that I have run it uphill just slightly in order to get perspective. Then the vertical line of the bow, curving it slightly at the top. Now let's swing in this curved line of the bow. Let it drop a bit, and then swing down, to a point about there. Make a nice rhythmic curve of it, just in order to block in this side of the ship and where it enters the water. Now you'd see very little of the other side of the bow. It curves down, comes to a point from this point of view, and curves in. This we call a concave line. This is convex, both of these. Back here, we might establish the horizon line across the bay or the river. And here in the foreground, get some perspective lines indicating the dock and the wharf. All these lines converging toward a vanishing point back here. In the foreground, let's put in a line of the dock. Instead of putting it absolutely straight across, we'll get a little perspective in it and sort of run it downhill at that side and uphill on this side. Now one of the upper decks, cube-like form, then establish another one and carry that line on down toward the stern of the ship. The funnels, smokestacks, today are pretty much streamlined on these big ocean liners. So instead of being exactly round, they're a little bit more of an airfoil shape. Make the back one look smaller, and they slant back at a slight angle. Then there would be a mast up here with a bar across like that, flag flying, and some derricks for helping unload some of the equipment. Right here beside the big ocean liner, let's put a little tugboat, pushing it in close to the wharf. Those tugboats are high in front and low in the stern. Yes, you might even put in a little broad tone back here to show that there are buildings way on the far shore, and establish a suggestion of a few more boats out there. Now let's start putting in some tone on this broad surface. Using a crayon on its side, I'd use a dark gray. Swing your lines in so that they follow the contour of the gunnels of the big liner. In perspective, you get an effect of the steel plate overlapping like that, just by making your chalk overlap, and then you might get an effect with a few vertical strokes like this too. Now we'll darken the shaded side over here by using black crayon. Bring it down. Now this ship has risen pretty high out of the water because they've emptied a lot of their ballast as they come into port. So actually you'd probably see a line here that shows the beginning of the water line, or what disappears below the water line when they're heavily ballasted and ready to sail. Now because this steel plate here on the bow flares out, it would catch a little less light than the other, so I'd shade it a little darker down this front part. Carry a little of that on back part way and work it in by going over it with chalks to establish a nice solid gray tone. here for the wharf and lower dock, work in some broad strokes, and right along here on the dock it would appear darker. Then you'll find that most of these places have steel construction divisions, steel construction sticking up above. Sometimes you'll see a crane and these horizontal lines converging back there in the distance. Some of these doors or openings you can darken a little bit and then put a reflection in the water, reflecting the dock and the bow of the ocean liner, and a few horizontal strokes here in the water. Using a black chalk or a black pencil, and put in a few details. Let's darken the little tugboat. Put a cabin up front, a large smokestack, and then some more cabin toward the rear. On the fronts of these little tugboats, they have a cushioning so that they can push the liner in against the docks. And you might even show a little stained effect here and there to show the effect of rust and ship having been at sea. Then let's carry a line along here, another one along the gunwale, and a couple more like that, so that you could establish some of those doorway openings, portholes, a few up front here, and suggestion of a few little gadgets up here, and men standing over the edge. Darken the top of the funnel in each case. Swing your line in a curve like that. Then we might switch to a lighter gray chalk to suggest these openings in the cabin, shade the fronts of the funnels and the front of the cabin here. Then blend a little bit here where the reflections appear in the water. I'm using a paper stomp for that, but you could use a piece of cleansing tissue or your fingertip. And of course, if you want to trim it here and there, you could use an eraser. Now with a paper stomp, I'm going to put in some smoke coming from this little tugboat and a few streaks here in the water. Now on the dock here in the foreground, you might darken it, showing heavy timbers and some lines between timbers here in perspective, as if these all aim at that vanishing point here in the center. Put some gray tone on these heavy planks. Oh, and we don't want to forget to indicate a great big anchor. Some of these anchors are sort of nested into the side of the bow to help streamline the ship. And over at the right, suggest a big tall piling like this. One of those heavy 3-inch ropes that'll add interest to your composition, going up over the edge like this. And a bit here, that's one of those iron posts that they tie the ship up to. Say a couple of fellows working here and there, that can just be suggested. But make a few lines swing down from the ship. These have been tossed over in order to haul the heavy hawsers down for tying the ship right up tight to the docks. And of course, the ever-present seagulls. And if you wish, you can put some tone in the sky and blend it. Well, that's about all the time we have for our composition of the ocean liner being brought into port. So we'll frame it.